I take photos?
Oh, thank you. Oh, it's yarn. Look, guess who I am.
Fiction film is based on placing human figures in the center of the frame. Center means the spot where attention, energy, and expression concentrate, not merely the middle. A presence in extreme corners rarely happens to the main character of a film. The borders of the frame are not the place for creation, for the appearance of fictional figures. Whether it be the familiar figure of a star or the strange figure of a non-actor. To be in the extreme corners is unstable and induces nervousness. No matter how far to the corner the fictional figures go, they will return to the center, to the circle of the story. It's not for the main characters to activate the extreme corners, or generally even the human figures.
You have a problem with gaze, Joe.
In this cinema, the frames often have a fictional stability, and rarely do they get out of this format, this narrative expression, by summoning or creating the illusion of a documentary, in which the presence of the figures and the intention behind capturing the image seem accidental, by marginalizing the main figures, or by shuffling the main and the secondary ones. Benicio del Toro in Che, Josh O'Connor in La Chimera. Getting out of the story circuit, which sometimes gives a sense of freedom, destroys the stability of this world for a moment. It shatters the framework. Over time, the position of the film star was sewn to the center of the frame. The presence of a film's protagonist in the center of the frame indicates that the film is fictional, so this world is allegorical. It is the proof of the presence of an intentional mind, the mind of the cinematographer behind the image. To discover Jean Renoir's films from the 1930s is to encounter a kind of unusual freedom. The 1930s, the peak years for documentary and experimental cinema. French leftists are resisting the growth of fascist elements. And Renoir, in Freedom, arranged and yet accidental, activates various points in the frame. His figures bring to life the most unlikely parts of the frame. And his objects as well. The lamps in The Crime of Monsieur Lange. Boudou saved from drowning. 75 minutes through the film. Freely, the film distracts its focus from the main figures of the story. The vast range of possibilities. The indeterminate, unfamiliar presence of the figures. The shot, documentary-like, unusual focal point.
A manifesto of the desire for freedom in the French style.
These are the same figures from the shot's opening. I can't believe they're still there. They were in that size. Now they're present in this size. The paddle activates the right corner. In the confusion of the blurred image, the star of the film passes through the frame without the camera's emphasis. The extreme right corner is active. Now the star is in his usual fictional place. The position of the figure in the frame. What does it express? Medium long shot. Unbalanced to the right. Vertical movement. taking the action to the extreme right corner. Animate, inanimate, animate. The camera reaches Tony, the main character of the film, in the far left corner and suddenly turns back. The frame doesn't become Tony's completely. It's as if Tony is one of the extras of the film. The fluid mechanics of Renoir's camera. Things transform into one another without them cutting to each other. Sometimes in this cinema, objects, figures become congruent. They become one along the camera movement, without any need of a dialectical Eisenstein-Godard cut to convey such an inaccessible feeling. In two turns of the camera's neck, the two bodies become one. Fictional space, documentary space. Fictional figure, documentary figure. The fictional figure, the main character of the film in a fictional frame. The main character of the film in a documentary frame. The figure's presence in each frame. What feeling does it bear? In a long take, this man, the evil owner of the publishing company who exploits his subordinates, is moving from being a central figure in the film to a marginal figure.
Wow, they're in the background.
Here, the extras play the main role. The mise-en-scène centers the exploited figures. The main characters, the central figures of the scene, enter the shot from such a place in the frame. The main and the secondary are mixed up. Freedom belongs to the entirety of the cinematic frame. The characters are formed together, side by side. An ethical system, and more importantly, a deep understanding of the origins of the film medium. A medium based on the mechanical recording and representation of the image. The center and the margins are equally taking part in making the frame, the story.
Compared to this, mise-en-scène seems closed in any other film, seems centrist, peripherally blind.
A man takes his bride on a weather-worn barge, Atalant, to the waters. Two lives come together, the committed and the free, the conservatives and the avant-garde. The conservatives board the ship of the avant-garde, the conformists next to the queers. Each seems to be desiring the life of the other. The characters move between two different aesthetics, arranged, free, fictional, documentary. The frames reflect the figures' desires. The arranged frame echoes the desire of the queers for a conventional life. And sudden frames the desire of the conformists for a life out of line. It frames the queers in balance and the conformists out of balance. And vice versa. The queers become central and the conformists become marginal, and vice versa. Arranged, free.
And freedom comes from the most complicated arrangements.
Balanced, unbalanced, unfamiliar. The relationship between the figure's position and the frame's form, what does it express? Arranged, sudden.
Hi.
Arranged, sudden. A film in the color of its name, Tangerine, and in the color of the story's out-of-line minorities, shot with an iPhone camera, with natural light, sharp, naked. The glamour of the conventional cinematic images appears to be pretentious in the face of such naked beauty. The Christmas Eve of two transgenders, two sex workers in Hollywood. A world with distorted boundaries of documentary and fiction, arranged and accidental. Distorted boundaries of the center and the margins, the main and the secondary. Boundaries are collapsing. This dreary orange city, saturated by the delirious midday sun, is my Hollywood. And you are my Marilyn Monroe. It offers its queer character the glory she was denied by recording her in the form of the center settlers of this city. Here, the figures are all marginalized and they are not divided in the way they are recorded. Look, it doesn't really matter whether the camera is fixed or not. There are moments that the figure comes out of the story circuit. Look, they're coming out. He brings his hand forward, knocks it out of the circuit.
Yeah.
Because the image is raw, even in its most arranged fictional moments, this bare texture affects everything. Everything is out of line, everything is vulgar, everything is something for not being shown, and this is what is being shown to us.
Another word from you. You shut your fucking mouth.
At the opposite end is the classic marked out world of a Canterbury Tale, in which the secondary figures are being recorded accidentally, an aesthetic to which the main figures of the film do not have a way. Defined boundaries of the center and the margins. Here, the presence of the main figures is both sudden and arranged. Rarely we have felt the main characters of a fictional film in this way. In a polyphonic world with a double presence, fictional, documentary, arranged, free. But this is so arranged. No, wait. She's coming out of the circuit. Getting out of the story circuit. The fictional space is destroyed. It is as if they are all bound by this story, and the moment they break it, they will be free. Do we all want to destroy the story? Is it a war?
Not exactly a war. There's no conflict. The atmosphere of a fiction film is in depth, something that we are crazy about. Hitchcock, Polanski, e.t.t, American film. It's a matter of a breach, a glitch, approaching being meta, the borderlines of the medium. It seems like all around the frame of the image is its outermost boundary, and when you challenge this in any way, on any level, it can produce nervousness. It's a particular place in the medium, a particular place in the psyche. It's even as if it is about the medium itself, and about the existence of the medium. I don't think expressing it as a war or confrontation is right.
A dual world with the homogeneous, unlit and marginalized texture of iPhone 5, which takes everything out of the line. Things that are not meant for showing are being shown. Original, contemporary. In Atalant, this atmosphere with dual expression synthesizes. The main queer of the film returns the wandering woman to the man's arms and perpetuates the marriage. The orgasm of this intimacy, recorded in a complete fictional format, is not a fictional shot in the manner of Hitchcock's North by Northwest, but it is free, sudden, accidental. Do I believe in cinema? Cinema has made my misfortune. The flat and two-dimensional image of the cinema, this false representation of a three-dimensional reality, by activating the three layers of the image, giving a movement, an action, the presence of a figure or an object to each of the three layers of foreground, middle ground, and background, alternately and in connection with each other, creates a three-dimensional perception in us. In The Godfather, Coppola, the stubborn obsessive, who records the orange shape of the oranges on the black asphalt on John Cazale's unconscious, and portrays Pacino's simplicity before contamination by sin with limited and extremely arranged color palettes, keeps the three layers of the image in a classic manner active in each shot. Brando, in the figure of a hand, as if a director is auditioning, activates the foreground of the frame. The presence of Brando, who has come from the world of gods, pantheon of the old creators, from the classic Hollywood cinema, is defined in the foreground, large and dominating, surrounding other layers of the frame. In the world of gods, however, the position of James Caan, the hot-blooded womanizer, in the first full appearance of his face in the image is the background of the frame, the opposite point of the Godfather, and the place where the flowers enter the frame, complimentary flowers for the acceptance of a stepson in a Hollywood film, with their flashy color, which is not allowed to enter the foreground where the Godfather is present with its elegant colors. The layers of the image narrate the story and create expectations. Expecting the foreground to activate and expecting the background to activate. The decision to present which actions in which layer, the essential choice of a filmmaker. By giving the entering moment of the evil characters to the background of the image, Mukri intensifies the horror of their presence. See that girl coming close from the back? You know the massacre will continue for another round. It's terrifying. Which action at which image layer evokes which emotion in us? Coppola, the stubborn obsessive, redefines the presence in the three image layers for this world. Pacino Coppola as the new Godfather, in the longest distance from the foreground to the background of the film, is defined in the opposite point of Brando, surrounded by the world around.
Why, don't let's f it up, man. Come on, let's get it together. I can't do any more than just ask you, to beg you, just to keep it together. You can do it, it's within your power, everyone. Everyone, Hell's Angels, everybody.
We're gonna take photos.
Let's just keep ourselves together.
From the late 50s to the early 70s, the breakdown of the framework of studio cinema, the extension of experimentation in fiction film, direct cinema, experimental cinema, new wave, and documentaries of the late 60s, the six-track sound of Woodstock, the audio experience becoming circular, killing the idea of freedom. Now, it was as if the Godfather project, the project of the classic American cinema in the heart of New Hollywood, was alien to Coppola. Coppola, who walked in the heart of metafilm territory with the conversation, redefining all the quintessential questions of cinema.
Does it bother you? Walking around in circles?
With Brando's The Godfather of the Story's death, the control of this classic world, the world in which the depth seemed to create the story, fell into the hands of Coppola, the avant-garde Coppola of the conversation, and he, who doesn't recognize himself controlling this world, destroys the story with the flatness of the image. It is as if he cannot depict his own presence in the heart of this classical world dynamically and in interaction with it. Honestly and on purpose, he makes it flat and static. The antagonist of The Godfather Part 2 is Lee Strasberg, the founder of the American Acting School, Actors Studio, the father of method acting, and Pacino's own godfather. Lee Strasberg, in a role originally written for Elia Kazan, is dying, and the film sets Pacino against him. In fact, it sets Coppola against and attached to the classic cinema. With every flashback, with every portrayal of the father's youth, Pacino's flat world is set against the deep world of the past. The film sets two aesthetics against each other, the flat and the deep. The classic three-layered Godfather mise-en-scène, the world of De Niro, Brando, and the static flat mise-en-scène, the world of Pacino, Coppola. Here, layers are not present, although they do exist. They don't beat, they're not connected in a circuit, they're not alive. Coppola standing between classic cinema and the new wave, incapable of dynamism. A world where, compared to the visual system of the previous film, its elements don't interact with each other. Yes, something like this and never gives it to Pacino's chapter. It's such self-destruction. The explicit documentariness of the courtroom scenes is the final attack of the outside world, the wave of the new, direct documentary cinema on the fictional world of the Godfathers, to Coppola, attached to the new wave and against it. Fictional figures, Pacino, Keaton, by being placed on the margins of these long shots, become insignificant figures to the story. Figures that even in a closer shot are not totally in the circuit of the story anymore. Coppola 1 foot in, 1 foot out, between passing through and killing the tradition and longing for its glory, which destroys him.
See it against the girl's crocheted dress. Saturday shook lurk with Snaggerisling the cat all around. See it against the girl's crocheted dress. Saturday shook lurk with Snaggerisling the cat all around. See it against the girl's crocheted dress. Saturday shook lurk with Snaggerisling the cat all around. See it against the girl's crocheted dress. Saturday shook lurk with Snaggerisling the cat all around. See it against the girl's crocheted dress. Saturday shook lurk with Snaggerisling the cat all around. See it against the girl's crocheted dress. Saturday shook lurk with Snaggerisling the cat all around. See it against the girl's crocheted dress. Saturday shook lurk with Snaggerisling the cat all around. See it against the girl's crocheted dress. Saturday shook lurk with Snaggerisling the cat all around. See it against the girl's crocheted dress. Saturday shook lurk with Snaggerisling the cat all around. See it against the girl's crocheted dress. Saturday shook lurk with Snaggerisling the cat all around. See it against the girl's crocheted dress. Saturday shook lurk with Snaggerisling the cat. Saturday shook lurk with Snaggerisling the cat all around. See it against the girl's crocheted. Saturday shook lurk with Snaggerisling the cat all around. See it against the girl's crocheted. Saturday shook lurk with Snaggerisling the cat.
It's so horrible.
The Village, M. Night Shyamalan, Midsommar, Ari Aster. Two contemporary horrors that push their central figures to the margins.
Why would they do this?
Figures surrounded by the will of a group. The story of an isolated community, marginalized, to stay safe from harm, which is in the center. The center here is the outside world, the nature. Is the center always nature? This story begins with an imbalance, with the death of one of the village founders' child, due to the lack of medicine. Medicine belongs to the outside world. It has no place here. The opening shot of the film, imbalanced, tilted. And now a little to the left of the center.
Question ourselves.
A fragment of Brendan Gleeson's trembling body, a strange presence in the foreground of this trembling shot. The threatening voice of the outside, of the forest, which is made by the village founders themselves, so that no one leaves the circuit of the village to avoid harm. Adrian Brody present, out of focus, in the right corner, and Jesse Eisenberg, who is not Jesse Eisenberg yet, on the left. Home, opposite the forest. There is no balance in the shared frames of the village founder and the children. The out-of-focus presence of William Hurt, a little imbalanced to the right, in front of the children's questions. The frames are still slightly tilted.
It's frightful, this business with the coyote, is it not?
The main characters of the scene and the volume of their voices seem to be surrounded by this crowd and its will.
Can we speak on other matters then?
Would be a relief.
Who is the center? What is the
I'm
center?
in love.
In Midsommar, the presence of these American figures, this black boy, and the position of his dialogue in the sound design is surrounded by this crowd, this space, this Swedish community.
Can I take photos?
Forest or home, imbalanced, tilted. Brendan Gleeson's presence does not have the usual expression of fictional characters. The presence of the figure in the frame, what does it express? Which figure, which frame, where in the frame? The last shot. Where is the center? Midsommar, Ari Aster's heliocentric horror. A group of young Americans go to a Swedish village. This life, this community, this collective mise-en-scène overshadows the cinematic presence of the figures and eliminates them one by one. The center here seems to be dominated by the shadow of the sun. The young Americans witness the first fully fledged appearance of Eastern European mise-en-scène. Jancho Tarkovsky. The story seems to be the story of this mise-en-scène overcoming an American slasher horror. The space overshadows the size of the characters. Isn't the idea of a slasher character in this size strange? Can a star, Meryl Streep, be imagined at this size? If so, what presence would she have? Is this size worthy of a film star? Is there a difference between the main and the secondary in this size? The face of a familiar actor or the face of a non-actor? Florence Pugh gets down to this size and back again. Playing with the size of the figures, the quintessential cinematic experience. This presence is not like the presence of the figures by this world's rules. Which world? Ari Aster's obsession stems from several sources: the tradition of Eastern European cinema, video games, anime, American slashers. The position of the figure, the presence of the figure in relation with the form of the frame. What does it express?
Sure, yeah.
Maybe they don't go near the corner because they are afraid of being eliminated. Outside that frame it is death. Off-screen presence is the presence of the dead. The sound is from another world. See, the issue is not exactly the center and the edge, or the middle and the corner. The issue is defining a specific type of figure in a specific type of aesthetics. The presence of the star in official aesthetics is like this. There are predefined slots for a star to fit in, for the extras, for the non-actors. Meryl Streep is unimaginable in Tangerine. If she could, it would be a little like her appearance in Soderbergh's raw aesthetics, strange, sharp. And how we hear her dialogue, where it's come from in the sound design.
Good evening, madam.
Hello.
How can I help you? I think you seem to be lost.
Oh, no, I'm not lost. I'm just wondering.
Yeah, you're not actually allowed in this area.
The mise-en-scènes seem to have pre-written codes. The points of short circuit, the point where the codes mix up, that is the spark of freedom. There are a series of pre-made piled up codes. Which figure, which aesthetic, which expression. And yet again, every work defines its codes in its own language. Now sometimes the aesthetic path of the film allows the code to break. A short circuit, a spark, freedom. Then there's Renoir, who seems to have no code at all. It is a collection of codes, or something. It was there before Renoir. Silent cinema doesn't have much established codes. Look where Chaplin is. Look which parts are active in Sunrise. The 1920s, or more precisely 1915 to 1925, is the future, if the future means freedom. The issue is not whether Renoir is the first or not, or if the figures go to this or that extreme corner after Renoir. The sense of the figure's presence in the frame, the world, the system, the mechanics of Renoir is a sense of liberation that is rare to be found. His figures are always being sublimated. They were recorded and they were not. They became mummies and they did not. And all this with that fleeting 1930s focal point, which is slipping away at any moment. Constant nervousness. And it is seen in many films from those years, but the figures of those films don't have this kind of presence. Mostly, this aesthetic decision to have a dual way of expression is dependent on the theme. If everything is not dependent on the theme. Voodoo, a monkey in quotation marks, a monkey of French cinema, comes among civilized people. The secondary, the main. Jonathan Demme's Philadelphia, a straight lawyer, a queer client, the main, the secondary. Not in their fictional roles, in their social positions. Documentary fiction. The side characters in cinema are more secondary than the queer ones. The star is the center. Although the most beautiful, the most real shot of the film is theirs. Now in this court they are in the same position. They are main figures. Now they themselves go in the perspective of a secondary figure.
Is Andrew Beckett the kind of lawyer who misplaces crucial documents?
Or the street lawyer, the main figure, takes a moment to pretend to be in the world of the secondary, becomes a queen, and the camera work accompanies him, gets released. In Kurosawa's High and Low, extreme corners are very active, but it doesn't feel like getting out of the circuit. Kurosawa's world is solid, rigid, masculine, outward. It has a specific circuit with closed borders. The very opposite point to Renoir, for example. His expression is predominantly masculine, outward. Renoir is feminine, inward. What about Nashville? Nashville is an entirely e.t.t film. The inner mechanics and the tone of e.t.t in the form of a rockumentary, a Woodstock concert. It's all out of line. It's a monolith. It doesn't exactly pass the figures between two aesthetics. Yes, this is Shelley Duvall, for instance, walking around like the extras, the secondary figures of the film. But this is not a figure that has been defined in a different way before and now departs from what it was before, from what it is. Many figures feel like this in the way this film is expressed. That's why it is a matter of a breach. A breach, departure from what one is. The transformation and development of one thing within itself into another. Ecstasy lies in the process itself. That something becomes something beyond itself within itself, with a slight change. That a self-proclaimed straight man wanting to get ass fucked.
Can I take a photo?
چراغ‌ها خاموش و چند شمع روشن کیک بخت طعم مرگ کارت مرد بحث مرد جنوب چشم بسته بود و پیراهنش سبز شهر به راه اشک و ما به بام بر رقص گوش به گوش بودند مردها و زنها سایر رنگ‌ها هم تنها بودند و شرمناک من به چشم دیدم سیاهی رو به من بود من به چشم دیدم گوشهاش بود پر خون من به چشم دیدم شاهدی سبز پوش در خود رگ سخت سرخ و سیاه در پوست فرشته دوزخ نگاهی شلیک کرد به او زد به سینه‌اش تیزی و شد سرخ رنگ او مرگ او شد مرگ بزم مرگ جمع مرگ عهد مرگ عهد آزادی در شهر پر آه رنگ شب تمام شد یک ماه رفت چاپ عکس شد مایه کشف قتل چون یکی برد انگشت به گوشه عکس گفت مردی گوشه قاب است 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 مردی گوشه قاب